All right, we're now joined by Richie Onari. How are you?
I'm lovely. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Good. I know we got some exciting sweet shows coming up, and always great to see the Ballroom Blitzers. But, you know, take us back a little bit. Give us a little bit of your background. I know you grew up in L.A.
Yeah.
During those fertile 70s, you know. It couldn't have been a greater era. You know, I moved here in '80, but always fantasized about, you know, the Sunset Strip and all the great clubs and bands of the '70s. Obviously, Van Halen came up through that era, and you know, so many other great bands. But tell us how you got involved in music. Who were some of the first bands or records you heard? Or I'm sure there were some great shows. I hear stories of the Universal Amphitheater before it had a roof on it and all that out here.
Yeah, when I was a kid, when I was 15, I saw Newport '69. Wow. And that had Hendrix and everybody you could imagine, you know, Jethro Tull and Creedence Clearwater. So that was my real introduction to a big, huge festival. Right after that, they went to Woodstock. So, you know, I started playing drums when I was 11. So I was already into, my brother was in bands, so I was just into playing music at that time, and I dedicated myself to music, and I played in tons of different bands. Yeah. And when I got a little bit older, I got involved with this guy Bob Steffen, who ended up playing with Kevin DuBrow in DuBrow, but he was also our guitarist in the group Satyr. But we were asked by Question Mark and the Mysterians to join his band from 96 Tears. Yeah. So we were about, you know, 18, 19, so that was our first national act that we hooked up with. Sure,
I know the Seeds were out, and yeah, all those bands, Pushing Too Hard, and all that great thing. We always heard the stories about, again, the riot on the Sunset Strip and the whole, you know, revolution that so much of came from the West Coast between the Bay Area.
That's right.
And L.A.
Yeah, it was exciting. I mean, Seeds played up. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and they played up at our grocery store parking lot. You know, yeah. Or you'd see Lord Sutch up at Winchell's. You know, playing in the parking lot. I mean, it was a very strange time. There, Bobby Darin would play at the North Hills. I mean, you never know where people were going to be making appearances. But then growing up and then getting involved with Chuck Wright, and we had this band Satyr, who we toured with Alice Cooper, when played with Aerosmith at the Starwood, and all these amazing things were happening for the band Satyr, a very highly progressive band. It was quite interesting because we were at a time where you would go and you'd see Randy Rhoads you know, in Hollywood, and you'd see Eddie Van Halen with 6 people on the stage playing. You know, he was the only guy like as good as Bob Steffen was. Yeah. I mean, you look at Eddie Van Halen, who's Bob Steffen, but at that time Bob was really recognized, who was in our band. Yeah. And you see Randy Rhoads, so it was amazing, and to see the whole evolution of the Strip and what was going on, and you know, Motley Crue were like big fans of our band, and all these things. It's, you know, recently I ran across Frankie Bonelli, and Bonelli goes, "We were scared of Satyr. You guys were too good. We were that good of a band because we were highly progressive, all these different kind of like a Rush, Genesis, Led Zeppelin kind of thing. A little ahead of its time, yeah." And Chuck Wright is still playing with Frankie now. Yeah, of course he plays with that. We played on the Heaven and Earth. We did a full circle because we did Heaven and Earth record, the Dig record, back some time ago. It was strange to hook up with Chuck after all those years and come full circle. Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, we're just a mile from where Randy Rhoads grew up, and, you know, Van Halen playing Gazaris and the whiskey and all that. Hard to imagine. Like I say, I was in the Seattle, Vancouver area, but I'd be hearing those inklings before Van Halen came out of what was happening, and you know, the legendary Starwood. I think Nicky Sixx actually worked at the liquor store up the street here when he formed Motley Crue. Oh, yeah. Now, obviously, you played with a lot of great bands, and it brings us, you know, to the group Sweet, which I saw this album cover in what was this, '75, or early '76, when Desolation Boulevard came out. Of course, Ballroom Blitz was the single, and I already knew that was Sunset Strip. No one needed to tell me the picture on the cover was the Sunset Strip. That's right. Now, what did that mean to you as you know, a musician, seeing someone from England immortalizing the Strip like that? Well, you know, it's funny because I really didn't know too much about Sweet. because they never really toured over here. They only came over a couple times, and I actually saw them at Santa Monica Civic, and I go, and I heard, you know, Love Is Like Oxygen. I went, wow. But, you know, again, I was, we weren't that, you know, it was The Who, Led Zeppelin, you know, it was a lot of different groups. And so learning about Sweet and finding that, you know, Mick Tucker also studied Buddy Rich and all these other great drummers that I studied. So when I got into Sweet, it was like a no-brainer. It was like, wow, this guy has chops. This guy's amazing. Yeah. And this is exactly, and that's how I, you know, it actually fit really well together with the Sweet. Yeah.
And I heard Tommy Lee was a big fan of Mick Tucker too. He was one of the influences.
Who wasn't? I mean, that guy was. He was unreal. I gotta say, I'm blown away by his the stuff that he pulled off. Not a lot of tracks that people are aware of, but if you look in the Sweet library and hear some of that stuff, I mean, it's like Ian Pace kind of level drumming. You know, it's
yeah. I was lucky enough to see him a few times live, and definitely great memories.
Yes.
You know, and so how did obviously Sweet come on your radar, and Steve Priest, the founding member and the bass player, you know, come to, you know, ask you to join the band?
Well, Stuart Smith was living with me, of course, from Heaven and Earth, and we had a partner. We had Black Star Records, and we had Kelly Hansen in the band. And,
now lead singer of Foreigner.
Yeah, and he was part of our label as well, and Howard Leese was producing Windows to the World at my house. I had a big studio house, so all this energy was happening, and then the Hurricane Katrina happened. So I was at the Billboard Live. I was the drummer that played behind Keith Emerson because we were already working with Keith, and I played behind, you know, all the different artists that night. Well, Steve Priest got up, so we played, and Steve was kind of retired at the time, and so long story short, after we did the show and we did a little thing at Fox and Hounds, Steve Priest calls Stuart Smith and says, "Hey, I'd like to put Sweet back together, and who should we get?" And then they said, "Well, Richie, you played with him. He's great, you know." So that's how I got in the band.
Amazing. Now, so your knowledge of Sweet at that point was the hits, the Ballroom Blitz, Fox on the Run, Love Is Like Oxygen.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now, obviously, they were at the forefront of that incredible British scene with David Bowie and T-Rex and Slade, and, you know, you mentioned A Quiet Riot. I mean, their two biggest hits were like Slade covers, you know. I mean, what did that era of music mean to you growing up here in LA, and had you ever seen Bowie or any of those other bands?
Well, I totally glammed out. Yeah. I had the big heels, and you know, I mean, I was just coming out of high school, and so when Bowie came out with Ziggy Stardust, I was at Santa Monica Civic, and I saw that show, Ziggy Stardust, and I was a complete Bowie fan. Yeah. And I love T-Rex. I didn't really realize, again, with Sweet, because their management really didn't send over the band unfairly enough to really work the market, like The Who. Everybody came over here. Everybody knew the hits, but they didn't know the name of the Sweet as much. Right. And so I became, unless the underground picked up and the guys that were in the know, knew. And then once I started finding out about, wow, this is an amazing legacy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, how about Rodney Bingenheimer's English Disco? Rodney's English Disco, did you ever frequent that?
I never made it. I was hanging at the Rainbow in the early 70s, right when it hung out with Todd Rundgren, and Bon was sitting behind me, and everybody you could imagine, and Blackmore sitting at a table, and I was in a popular band too, local band that played with, like I said. So we got a lot of attention, but I never did that. I wished I did, but we saw Rodney when we did the K-Rock show. He was getting off, and so that was my only, I've seen
that's cool. Yeah, no, I remember seeing Sweet with Mick. It was Andy and Mick's band in Hollywood, and of course Rodney was there, and you could just tell that it was one of his proud, babies. Of course, Rodney was the first to play so many bands here in America, and to see K-Rock going from a little, almost like a college station in Pasadena to the world force that they are, it's pretty amazing. Now, obviously the catalog is rich. There's a lot of songs here. for you as the drummer, which ones do you look forward to playing the most in the set?
I like Set Me Free and Sweet F.A. I get to really play in those songs. You know, even Windy City. There's some very challenging things. I like to play those songs. But pretty much it all, you know, what's great about Sweet is the music really moves. Playing with Steve Priest, the great bass player he is, his pocket is just amazing. I mean, he just plays simple, but, you know, that's the foundation. So we just were like that. Because I played with so many different English type, you know, bands, with Nigel Benjamin and all these people. It was just right up my alley. And so I like it all. Yeah, enjoy it all.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Have you heard the version of Set Me Free with Steve Stevens on the Vince Neil album?
No.
Oh, yeah. Vince Neil and Steve Stevens covered Set Me Free on
I know
Vince's...
Iron Maiden, too.
Yeah.
A lot of people have done it. Yeah.
Sure. Lots of covers. And now tell us about Guardians of the Galaxy, too.
Well, that was pretty amazing. Back about, must have been about a year ago, all of a sudden you hear on Suicide Squad they're using Ballroom Blitz on the trailer. And so it's all over. So we had 13 million downloads. And then months later, all of a sudden we're contacted that, you know, you're going to be on the soundtrack of Guardians of the Galaxy. So I was like, wow, that's really great. What song? Fox on the Run. And all of a sudden, I forgot how I learned, but you go on the internet and we're #1 on the rock charts on iTunes with Fox on the Run because we're getting the trailers out. So just recently I went to the premiere and hung out with the show creator James Gunn, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It comes out May 5th, the night we're playing Candy Club, so it's exciting. It's exposing the whole next generation to sweet music with those two coupled together with Ballroom Blitz and Fox on the Run, which are the biggest hits. Yeah, it's quite an interesting year for sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how the music is timeless. It keeps coming back in waves, and you know that, like I say, the '70s has that special place in my heart. I know that, you know, having been a teenager during those years. Like they always say, the music you grew up on is the soundtrack to your life. But it's amazing seeing these younger kids. You go to, you know, the classic rock shows, and you see the original fans and their offspring, and maybe even their grandson or daughter. I mean, it's kind of amazing to see the young kids walking around with the Zeppelin and AC/DC shirts, and they weren't born, you know, till many years after.
That's right. Well, let's face it, it's a Renaissance period. When you look back and growing up in Hollywood and seeing exactly in the English influence in Ed Sullivan's show and all that, this was a pure music, and it is indicative to exactly what is happening with, you turn on the radio, regular radio, you've got classic rock still being played. I mean, that really didn't happen with the big band era. It kind of moved on, but because music's kind of stalled in so many different ways, and the demographic is there, you notice that classic rock is still embedded in our society. It's not going to go away because it was a Renaissance period of time, and it seems like it's gonna. That is pretty much the you know, etched in stone, hopefully, as long as possible.
Well, it definitely seems like the blueprint that, you know, the next couple generations have drawn from. And we were just talking earlier about Desert Trip, which was, I think, the highest grossing, you know, concert of its kind, you know, and it doesn't seem to be, you know, waning in any part. Obviously, a lot of these bands are near retirement, of course, with the Aerosmiths and the AC/DCs and the Van Halens and all that. You got any Van Halen stories? I mean, the fact that these guys were a local Pasadena band and how hard they rocked the world with that first album, just an amazing story. Not living here, I mean, you know, living outside, they represented that Southern California energy. And obviously before that, a lot of the British bands were very dark, you know, Sabbath was very sinister and, you know, evil, and, you know, a lot of the music was very progressive or that. And Van Halen came out and it was just like the backyard party, tailgating,
Boogie band. It was a boogie band. I went to Gazzari's, which ended up Billboard Live and all those other things. And you know, at that time, I was playing with all the top cats and in jazz, and you know, I came from jazz background.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we go into Gazzari's, and there's this band called Van Halen playing, and I see this little drum set up there, and I knew all the best drummers around town. And all of a sudden, this Alex guy went in this drum solo, and I went, "Oh my God, this guy is freaking amazing!" I was really, I felt, you know, competition-wise, I felt threatened by it, how good he was. I was like, wow, this guy is really great. And then as it evolved and they started doing the Starwood, and then you'd be at different clubs. Or I went and saw Gentle Giant at Santa Monica Civic, and they're David Lee Roth before they made it. You know, he was walking up and down, and he had this like satin cowboy shirt. But you could see this charisma just come from him, like, I am the best. And I noticed that with Kevin DuBrow too. They had this incredible need for attention, and they demanded it, and they actually, you know, assumed that. And you know, to see that come and to see how that took off, and you know, we were a pretty big band at that time, and then all of a sudden to be there, you know, with Devil. How they got signed with Mo Austin in that entire time, it was pretty phenomenal to see that whole thing, you know, just evolve, where they became like from this to boogie band to, you know, with Ted Templeman.
Yeah, of course.
Getting involved. It was,
the first time I had heard him was the remake of "You Really Got Me," and it's like, as much as I love the original, it's like, this is the new generation right here. They took that classic British Invasion song, and as innovative as that riff was in the 60s, Eddie twisted it to a whole nother level. Yeah.
He had his tone together, and he had all that. He uses the Variac, and he was, you know, he's a genius at getting guitar tone, and that's such an essential thing. It was just a magic combination.
Yeah.
They had the chemistry from a boogie band that would be playing this, you know, this little
backyard
valley
party
club, backyard parties.
Yeah.
I mean, to see these guys, you know, they had they had that it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, like you say with Kevin DuBrow too. I remember seeing him at the Whiskey with DuBrow, and he's twirling the mic stand like it's the Forum. You know, I mean, you could just tell a band, they could be playing a small club, but they're really putting on an arena show.
Right.
So first chance they get playing in an arena, they're built for that.
That's right.
Yeah. No, first time I saw Van Halen live, of course, they opened for the Black Sabbath tour, Ozzy's last tour.
Oh.
And I was in Seattle at the time, but I heard, and I witnessed it obviously that night, they smoked Sabbath off the stage every night. I mean, the crowd was like really up, and the songs were like a party, and then Ozzy was at his lowest with the drugs and alcohol, and they came out like a dirge, you know, and the crowd just emptied. And Van Halen, they were headlining the same arena like 6 months later. It was like, and of course they kicked Ozzy out of the band after the end of that tour. It was so humiliating. So, yeah, no, that was the entry to that. Well, again, so many great songs, and I love the fact that you picked what most people would consider more album cuts, with Sweet F.A. and Set Me Free and Windy City and Into the Night and all that. Because like I say, it's amazing when a lot of people just skim the surface and you hear, oh sweet, they were one-hit wonder. You know, it was Ballroom Blitz and that was it. And they don't even give Box on the Run or, you know, obviously Love Is Like Oxygen, which was a few years later, a shot. It's amazing how a critic can try to minimize a band who obviously had a lot of great songs. And doing the research, I see that Sweet was really a huge singles band in England. I mean, with Top of the Pops and the fact that everybody was buying singles, they really had a lot of, you know, number one, number twos, top 10 singles in a row.
I mean, Action, Blockbuster.
Yeah.
I mean, all those songs. Action. I love
Hellraiser,
playing
Teenage
Action.
Rampage.
Oh yeah, they're just one after.
WigWamBam. I mean, there's just tons
Oh.
of ear candy.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously, I know the band kind of fought to get out under. I love even on the cover, Strung Up, where people would say, "Oh, well, you guys are just puppets," you know, for Nicky Chin and Mike Chapman, you know, who wrote, you know, so many of the hits. But obviously, they evolved and they came out with their, you know, their sound, which was obviously harder, and you know, we're right up there as far as I'm concerned with, you know, with those great bands, you know, of that era, and it's, like I say, always great to see the band still alive and well. Now, I know Andy Scott obviously has his version of the band over in, you know, England and Europe, and I don't need to get into it, but hopefully they can coexist. You know, I'm sure there's situations again where, you know, it's hard to reunite. Obviously, Mick Tucker and Brian Conley are gone, but you guys do a great job. Talk about your bandmates, Joe Retta, and who else is in the band, Mitch Perry. Give a little bit of background on these guys and why they're the perfect fit for Sweet.
Well, when Stuart was the guitarist in the band for the first couple of years, and we've had several guitarists since his parting, we just at the beginning, on the onset, we were looking for a great lead singer that could really nail the parts, and we happened to run across Joe Retta, who was doing a Queen tribute.
Okay.
And we went to the Candy Club and we saw him and we go, wow, this guy's amazing. So he was kind of undiscovered at the time. So we brought Joe in, and now he's, you know, he's all over the place doing a lot of great stuff. But he really was able to morph into Brian Conley, and he was able to pull it off. He doesn't look like Brian. That's the idea, is that he's filling the shoes of Brian. It's not a tribute band.
Yeah.
You know, we
not gonna dye his hair or put a wig on.
No, we have the name.
It's the sound.
You know, we are Sweet, and you know, so we were convinced with him. And then Stevie Stewart was in a classic rockers with all sorts of people, with all the Eagles people and Boston people, and he was touring, and we heard of this keyboard player. He came in, and he was the perfect fit. So it all came together at my house, actually. That's where we had the rehearsal space. I had, you know, a sound stage in my house, a full-on studio. So we were able to, you know, get the band together, and, you know, with Steve and Joe and Stevie and myself, and then, you know, we had some other guitarists, and then we approached Mitch Perry, who's was also, he's been with us for a couple years for the shows we do. He plays with, you know, he's pretty much hired gun for a lot of different people. Yeah,
of course, he played with Michael Schenker Group and Lita Ford and everybody over the years, Rat and everybody.
But his interest on Sweet, because he was in England like yourself, and so he had this real respect, because he'd be looking at the, you know, Top of the Pops, and he loves Sweet. And so when he came in, what I really liked about his approach was the Andy Scott rock. He really plays those parts as they should be played.
Yeah.
And then it's Mitch Perry like too. He's able to flail and really add to the show. So Mitch has been a really great thing to add to the band. So, you know, with Joe and then Stevie, his great keyboard playing, it's been fun, and it's fun music to play. I mean, that's what the audience really loves the music, and there's so many different hits within the show. So
yeah, and like I say, not a lot of that's left. You know, Bowie's gone, Mark Bolan's gone, obviously Slade. You know, Noddy Holder retired many years ago. I mean, not much. I see Mott the Hoople's pretty much retired. Ian Hunter doing his thing. Yeah. So from that era, you know, there's not a lot of people still doing it.
Well, yeah, we went and did, further adding on to what we were discussing about, we went to Europe at Steve Priest's Suite, and we played with Slade over there at a big, you know, some concerts and so forth. That was interesting. And, you know, that's a big market share, that whole, because that's where they really did tour, and so back in the day. So, you know, Andy's got a nice slide. So he kind of mainly does, even though we have gone over there, we really do you know,
North America.
North America, Canada, do a lot of dates in Canada since we reformed in 2008, since the band reformed, and we were able to do that, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, is there any talk of doing new music, or you guys collaborating or anything? I mean, obviously people come to the shows, they want to hear the hits, but you have a lot of creative people in this band. I know you have your side projects and the rock opera and all that we'll definitely cover on another time, but is it ever talked about?
Yeah, a matter of fact, we just recently we were discussing that I think Steve has been, you know, the legacy of Sweet, it's got to be up to a certain standard to be able to come out, and so there's been a bit of a hold on that.
Right.
But now our agent, Mark Hyman from Ashley, he says, listen, you guys got to really put some new stuff out. So we're putting some attention towards that.
At least a single. Come up with a single that's in the vein of...
An EP, yeah.
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 Now, Sweet's obviously known for the, you know, the harmonies, the high, you know, vocals and all that. Was that challenging to pull off? How do you approach that?
I'll tell you, you come to the show and people are just like, wow, because everybody sings, except myself. I mean, I sing in my own solo project, but not when I drum for Sweet. Right. But we pull it off quite nicely, and we hit all that, and it has the Andy Scott real high part, and we pull it off. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Like I say, you know, fans of Queen and obviously Freddie's Register and Brian May and everything, obviously need to check it out. Like I say, I always thought Sweet was grossly underrated. As great and big as they were, you know, obviously I thought, you know, given America, I'm hearing stories about them in their prime, you know, being on Capitol Records, getting the tour opening for Bob Seger, and I'm like, Bob Seger, that just doesn't sound like the same audience, you know. No. They needed to be out there with the Queens and, you know, great, you know, rockin' bands like that.
Well, Queen, you know, Sweet was before Queen, and those harmonies were before that, so you've got to look at that, not to take anything away for Queen, because they're Queen. Yeah. But, you know, did they model?
They had to be a little influence, you know.
Did they get some influence from Sweet? And so many of the bands, from Guns N' Roses to everybody, they say that they're, you know, it's all over the place, that we were, including Kiss, and, you know, Sweet was really the architect of along with Bowie and T-Rex, of the glam movement. And Sweet had a lot. They were there at the right time. Steve Priest being there, from the founder, really the original guy, even before Andy Scott in '69. You know. So
that's many years on. Any other celebrity sightings? Anybody come out of work to show their appreciation for Sweet you've come across?
Well, it was interesting at the Guardians of the Galaxy, that the Dolby, to be there and to see Stallone and Vin Diesel and Kurt, you know, everybody came out on stage, and they all came out to Fox on the Run. So that was nice. And going to the party after at the Palladium, that was a good hang, and talking with everybody. But yeah, there's been a lot of different. I'm surprised that actually a lot of the major celebrities haven't come, like you know, Nikki Sixx and a lot of the people to come and see the band. But I know that Steve's in touch with, you know, the guys from Def Leppard. They contact him and talk to quite a bit. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
It was great to see the little images of Sweet in the, I think it was the Rocket video, where they're, if you recall that video, there's all these TV screens going on behind Def Leppard, and of course Joe Elliott, just a huge fan of that era. But you know, you definitely see Sweet along with Bowie and Mark Bolan in the TV screens, you know.
And they opened the show with Action too many times. Or at least they did back a few years ago. Years ago,
Yeah, no, that's amazing stuff. Well, obviously we're going to be there in force this Friday at the Canyon Club and Saturday at the Rose. If you haven't checked out the Rose, what an amazing club out here in Pasadena. So anyone watching, come on out, see Sweet. Where can people go to find out more upcoming dates? What's the website?
It's thesweetband.com. Okay. Thesweetband.com. And mostly now with Fox on the Run and Guardians, we've got our Fox on the Run T-shirts. Now we have a store that we're actually starting. I mean, we sell the heck out of our merch at our shows, but now with Guardians, we've got a new webmaster in there that's doing this whole thing. So you'll be able to start purchasing all the sweet merch right now. But we look forward to everybody coming out to the show. It's going to be it's going to be a sweet show that we're going to kick some booty.
It's a celebration for those that were there and those that wish they were there, you know. And in closing, Richie, what little tips or advice can you give to the young bands coming up? Obviously, you've been doing this for a while and learned so many great lessons. You know, what can you impart on that young player? I know the business is constantly evolving, but as far as that mind state they need to really kind of get their own style or stick with it and, you know, have a shot at this, what do you tell them?
Well, the music business has changed so much, as we all know. So the whole record, so as, you know, you can self-promote, you can do that. You've got Dave Grohl, who talks about analog and to be, you know, real music. You listen to what's going on the radio in new music, and it's, you know, hey, it's progress. You know, it's evolved. Whatever it is, you know, you don't want to look back and go, oh, you know, because you do start feeling like one of the guys from the big band eras, because it does progress. But we have lost the nature of rock and roll. You know, I think that, you know, is rock and roll dead? You know, it's not dead until the fat lady sings.
Yeah.
And then there's Adele. Okay. But wait, no, just saying, just kidding, Adele. Yeah. Okay. But the fact is that coming up in this new thing, I think everything comes full circle. I think that with, just like how you see the blues has resurfaced from the 20s, and it keeps on coming up, I think the same thing will happen with rock. Because rock will continue to grow because we're able to capture on recordings. So with kids coming up, you know, keep rocking, find a way to get rock out there, because it's going to be coming up. You know, there's got to be a next Guns N' Roses. That's what creates the excitement. What's going to do that? It's not just all about pop. So I would say just push ahead, get the right chemistry of the right guys in the band, like Van Halen did, and there's certain chemistry. Pretty much don't get ahead of yourself with egos. Lead singers going off on this or that, shooting themselves in the foot. This is what can be the cancer of a band. And that's why it's such a highly not attainable situation to be in. But if you're really serious, you're going to get, like in Van Halen, you're going to have a great party band that grows. And if you keep the faith and you keep on doing what you're doing and you build up your following and you really have great music and great musicianship, study the masters and come up with an original sound.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting, you know, with the passing of Chuck Berry and all that. There's got to be a next generation to take what Chuck started and what so many people have, you know, developed over the years. It's going to be exciting to see where music goes. And like you say, there's really no rules or no boundaries now. You can put your own music out. You can go, you know, form your own fan base, and, you know, if it resonates with people, anything's possible. So always great to join you, Richie. We're all going to be out at the Sweet shows. TheSweetBand.com is the place for all the new tour dates and updates on what's going on in the world of Sweet. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.